Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. Anyone for some late night violence? Sounds like good stuff. Some Bloodline Champions for you right here. A lot of people have asked for some more Bloodline Champions content, and I'm happy to provide that. Bloodline Champions is probably the game that I'm playing the most of at the moment in terms of my casual gaming, which, of course, is kind of an odd term considering the hardcore nature of a game like Bloodline Champions. It's certainly not a casual game by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the thing that I like about it is that you can get a match done in about 5 minutes, so if you're just sort of fitting in gaming in between jobs, this is a good way to do so. Now, as regards to the class that I'm playing right here, I am playing the Gunner, and the Gunner does exactly what you would expect a Gunner to do, i.e. the Gunner shoots at people, the Gunner has a rocket launcher, the Gunner has various things. So I'll explain the mechanics of the Gunner right here. I'll show you several matches as I go through, and I'll also talk a little bit once I have finished talking about the Gunner as to what's going on in this match, and of course a bit more information about Bloodline Champions. Just remember, the Bloodline Champions is a free-to-play game, so it's very easy to try this game out, and I would highly recommend that you do so, simply because if you have any interest in kind of PvP arena play, maybe you've been interested in World of Warcraft, but it's not really been your thing, or maybe you're a Dota player, a HON player, or a League of Legends player who's perhaps looking for something that's more of a arena combat game as opposed to a lengthy MOBA. Well, this game might be for you in that regard. Also, if you're a Smashcraft player, for instance, who's looking for something else, I mean, the thing about BLC is that BLC and Smashcraft are two very similar games. However, the tournament system and the esports system behind Bloodline Champions is much better in the fact that it has a fully developed tournament system that's entirely automated within the game. It was pretty kick-ass, actually. I took part in my first open tournament a couple of days ago, and with our little 3v3 team, we got through the qualifiers, and we got to the round of 32, I believe. And it's all completely automated within the game. It's pretty awesome like that. All of the qualifiers are automated, the brackets are automatically set up, you can check those out, and then once you get into the brackets, it goes into a best-of-9 set of matches, and it automatically tabulates the results and keeps all the records for you, and it also gives you a special kind of in-game currency for competing in them. These tokens, various different coloured tokens you can use to spend on unique avatars and titles and stuff like that, so that's pretty kick-ass, honestly. It's a very well-designed system, and as far as I'm concerned, that tournament system should be in every game ever, including StarCraft 2. It would make things an awful lot easier. Anyway, I was going to tell you about the Gunner. So, the Gunner is a ranged combat class, pretty fragile, and obviously, it requires an awful lot of aim in order to properly play the Gunner. So, the primary attack, the left mouse button, is called Focus Shot, and every time you successfully connect with a Focus Shot, your cast times go down. So, that will stack up to 30%, and it'll stick around for about 7 seconds, as you can see the buff at the bottom right there, and you can refresh it every time you hit with it. So, there is a bit of a casting rotation with that. You want to try and stack it up to full, and then start using things like Execute. Execute is your right mouse button ability. It has a cooldown. It's a very powerful shot with a long wind-up time, and it will also go through targets, so you can hit multiple people with it. It's very powerful. Now, you've also got a couple of escape techniques with this particular character, and one of those you just saw right there is the rocket jump. It does damage, and it will fire you in the direction that your back is facing. So it's a useful escape ability, but it takes a little bit of finesse, and it's a little bit too easy to fire yourself into a wall, for instance, so that's something that you need to keep in mind. Your other escape ability is Q. That's a stealth move. You will disappear, and you will stay stealth for a few seconds. You'll gain a little bit of a speed boost in the process. So combining those two is useful, and usually you've got some method of escape off cooldown. If you don't, the chances are you've done it wrong, and if you get locked down without an escape method, the chances are you will die. The Gunner is not a particularly durable class. Now, you've got a little bit of crowd control as well in the form of that Execute shot, as well as the Mortar and the Disabling shot. Disabling shot, very nice, and you can see right there, very easy to aim, and it also makes following up with an Execute much easier as well. And you've got a Mortar, and the Mortar is really great. It does a bit of AoE damage, it has a small casting time, nothing major, as well as a travel time, and it blinds anyone that it lands on, so that's really powerful. Now, your ultimate for this character that you might have seen in the videos up until this point is Rocket Launcher. It fires 5 rockets, and they deal 20 damage per shot, and they have a small splash radius as well. Or they have a travel time. It's a little bit tricky to control and hit with all 5, but when you get the hang of it, it is pretty awesome. Okay, so we'll go into another matchup right here, and I can tell you a little bit as well about the EX moves. So those of you who watched my I Suck at Bloodline Champions video, that was from the beta, and they've added a lot of things into the game since then, as well as a lot of polish. Now, each character now has 2 EX moves, and that means you can take an ordinary move, and you can use some of your energy bar in order to use a different kind of move. Now, the energy bar up until that point was only used for the use of the ultimate. Now, if you don't want to use your ultimate, for instance, and some characters have ultimates that are not ideal in certain situations, you can spend some of the energy bar on an EX move. So, in my case, I've got one called Pin Down. It does less damage, but it has a lockdown stun effect, which is extremely useful, and that's the EX of the Execute. And I've also got something called the Big Bertha Shot, which is an EX of the Mortar. It's a direct fire shot as opposed to a mortar. It's got a reasonable AoE, and it has a massive knockback effect. So if you need to get someone away from you in a pinch, then you can hit them with a Big Bertha, and it'll fly them across the map. Very, very effective. Now, each character in this game is pretty well balanced as far as I can tell, and they also have a lot of depth to them. And some people might say, well, the game's only got a few abilities per class, so surely this doesn't have a lot much depth. Well, not really. Just because of the way that the game plays and the way that the characters control, I think there is an awful lot of depth to the combat, and I like that an awful lot. The fact that there's WAS and D really does help. The fact that everything has to be aimed and there are no automatic hits of any description in this game, that's nice. I like that an awful lot. So it gives me the feeling of a highly skilled arena game with a very high skill ceiling. There's probably a couple of things that could be added to it to make it even more interesting, like adding blocks and things like that. And a lot of classes do have blocks, but say that Gunner doesn't. The Gunners are all about evasion. I suppose that's alright, actually, because that means that not all the classes play in an identical manner. But I think they've done a really good job of diversifying the classes. I mean, a lot of classes have a ranged ability, but they'll all do different things. Say, for instance, the Gunner's focus shot, the primary shot that I've got, reduces the casting time. However, if you take a look at, say, the Reaver, then the attacks with him actually stack damage, and there's a bunch of other different classes that do all sorts of different things. Like, we're fighting the Harbinger over there right now that I'm shooting at, and he's got a mechanic called Affliction, which is a nasty stacking debuff and things like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff to be had. And once again, high skill ceiling. The fact of the matter is that Reaver just reflected a shot back into my face with very good timing and ended up killing me right there. And the thing I like about this game is that I never feel like I've died to BS. I never die to cheese or anything like that. There is no cheese in this game as far as I can tell. Because it's very obvious as to what's killed you, and because everything is aimed, you can figure out exactly why it is that you died and you don't get upset. I think that a lot of MOBA games lack that, and as a result, it causes an awful lot of rage. You feel there's imbalance and things like that, whereas this game is very firm but very fair as well. It's easy to learn and hard to master, and that is definitely something that I am a big fan of, and I think it's something that's kept me playing the game up until this point. Not doing particularly well in this particular match. I'm doing a fair amount of damage. We're getting killed off quite early on. Now, in terms of team composition, I'm playing solo ladder right here. I play Gunner in solo ladder, and I play Vanguard in fixed teams. Vanguard is a tanking class. You'll have seen me play him in the other Bloodline Champions video, and he's got a lot of cool abilities. Oh my god, I got completely decimated there. What the hell am I doing? As you can probably tell, this is just a bunch of random clips that I took while I was playing, so it's a bit higgledy-piggledy. There's matches here and there and weird compositions and stuff like that. I've got a fairly reasonable setup here. I've got a Reaver, got 2 ranged classes here as well, the Nomad and the Gunner, so that's pretty good. They've actually got 2 Nomads and a Psycho Pump, which is a healer, so that's a little bit weird. But it's not necessarily a bad setup because of the amount of control it's got. That tornado ability is goddamn infuriating. It's not unfair or anything, it's just hard to deal with, because if you get caught in it, then you're locked down for a good couple of seconds. However, if we can actually start piling on the healer, then we can deal an awful lot of damage. The Reaver is just such a nasty piece of work when he gets into range. He can completely destroy anything, although he's a little bit weak. If he gets focused down, he will die very, very quickly. Ah, Nomads. Yes, you are no match, I'm afraid. Managed to take one of them out. We'll take the other one. There we go. Nice snipe. And come on, take it, take it. There we go. Not bad at all. Ah, yes, as I say, I like playing the Gunner. It's very satisfying. Landing those execute shots is like the best feeling in the world for me. It's really, really cool. It's a very meaty combat going on. It doesn't feel floaty in any way. Now, compositions in lower level leagues are, well, they're pretty much, oh, this is what I pick, you know. And bear in mind that the free-to-play guys are also restricted in which characters they can play unless they've unlocked them by some other means. So often you'll find, like this week, there's a lot of nomads, because I'm fairly sure nomad is in the rotation. So you'll often find teams with 2 nomads in them, which is not an ideal setup, honestly, but it can be a little bit annoying if you're not careful. Regardless, though, that kind of sorts itself out in arranged team play, so that's not really a big deal. And there are tournaments going on for this game almost every day in the in-game tournament system, so I think that's really the best way to experience it, although Solo Ladder does have its advantages, certainly. I think the thing about Solo Ladder that, say, League of Legends doesn't have, when you ladder in a solo format in League of Legends, you often run into a situation where you're very, very frustrated. And that's because you're stuck on a team that might not be optimal for ages. Whereas here, if you get in a bad team, you're stuck with them for maybe 5 minutes, and then that's it. So you don't get as angry. It's a lot more chilled out experience, even though it's a much more intense game. Very adrenaline pumping, and obviously it's very knife edge a lot of the time, because especially as a ranged damage class, if you get locked down, then you are in a lot of trouble. You will get torn apart so fast, it is not even funny. But I do like this game an awful lot, as you can probably tell. I'm having an awful lot of fun with it. Let's lock that Nomad down. Ultimate ready. Oh, yes, we are ready to rock and roll. Look at that. That is a wonderful little collection of people to shoot at. It's quite hard to hit from this range with the rocket launcher, especially once you get going, because people see the rocket launcher coming in, they instantly run the hell away as quickly as possible. Speaking of running away, we need to get the hell away from that. Get ourselves healed up just a little bit, let the rest of the team deal with it. They're pretty much doomed now anyway. But I like the fact that you can pick a class and you can spend ages trying to master it, and you always seem to learn new tricks. I mean, every now and again, I'll come up with something new for the gunner that I hadn't really realized before, like jumping over shots with the rocket jump, for instance, or doing a backwards rocket jump in order to get into a fight quicker and stuff like that, rather than using rocket jump as an escape method, actually using it as an engagement method to reposition into a area where I can flank the opponent, hit him from the side, from an unexpected angle, all sorts of things. You know, rocket jump into stealth, for instance, so that people lose track of where I am, and I can reposition for a good shot. Yeah, there's a lot of depth in this game. There really, really is. I think perhaps there could be more. Like, for instance, some kind of character customization, even if it's not in a case of equipment. Maybe it's something that everyone has access to. I was actually talking to James Harding, who is the esports manager for this. You might know him as Too Good. He's a Quake 3 commentator. He's also going to be commentating, well, more to the case of hosting, the Stockholm Invitational, the DreamHack StarCraft 2 event. So you might know him. He's a very famous commentator, very good at what he does. And he was telling me that they were considering little bits of equipment that could perhaps change different stats in favor of others, but they'd be available to everyone. Just give the game a little bit more depth that way. So that seems like a kind of cool idea. We'll see how the game develops. Fact of the matter is the game is free, so there's really no reason not to give it a try, and I would highly recommend it to anyone, really, if they want an arena play game. The only problems I really got with it right now, certainly from an esports perspective, is it doesn't have a replay system, and the game is capped at 60 FPS, which is done so to make sure no one has an unfair advantage. However, what I find is, for some stupid reason, the game seems to stick at 45 instead, which actually makes frapsing quite difficult. Those of you who've used fraps before will know that if you have it in the mode where it's not capped to the frame rate of the game, it will find the nearest multiplier. So, for instance, if you're filming at 30 FPS, and you start at, say, 120 and it dips below that at any point, then it will then lock at 90, and then it will lock at 60 if it falls below that, etc., etc. So what I'll often find is that if I'm frapsing this game, it will get stuck at 30 FPS because it's getting, well, 45, so that's not ideal. And I think I just got landed on by the big fat guy, Vanguard, goddammit. So, filming it can be a little bit tricky because I don't like playing at 30 FPS. It sort of affects my aim, it affects my rhythm a little bit, but whatever. It's not a huge deal, and it does have a great casting interface for live casting and spectating. It just lacks a replay system. So, that would be nice, and I know for a fact they're working on it because it's already been brought up on the forums, and I know Too Good wants things like that, and he's doing a stellar job of making sure this is a fairly entertaining esports game. But I think I'll provide some more Bloodline Champions content going forward, maybe a look at a few other champions. I am playing a little bit of the Reaver, I obviously play the Vanguard. I've showed you a bit of the Vanguard back in beta, but I'm a much better player than I was before. So I'm getting a reasonably high rank. I'm about to hit a 1400 PSR, which is not terrible, certainly. It's still very low level, but in this game, you don't go up in leaps and bounds. You tend to go up quite slowly, which is a pretty good thing, honestly. You move up from, say, Iron Division 5 to Division 4, all the way through to Division 1, then you get promoted to Bronze League, then you go through Division 5 through the 1 there as well. So you never feel like you're really jumping ahead of your skill there, and I think that they do a good job of matching you up with people who are of fairly equal skill. And as I said before, the most important thing is you never feel like you're being cheated out of a win at any point. And if you end up being matched with someone that sucks, it doesn't matter because you won't be matched with them in the next game. So it's all good. Death by rocket jump. Is there any better death? My name is TotalBiscuit. That was a little bit of a look at Bloodline Champions once again with the Gunner class. And I'm going to bed. I'll see you next time.